Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, of course, is Xtreme TV. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have from we got to come up with a name for that South Orlando area that you're in there, sir. Because Orlando's, obviously, but I like to point out how violent it's become. And of course, Pine Hills, we know that is, sir. But where you're at, it's where the mouse reigns and things are changing dramatically, and it's a shame.
I live in Disney World. Ha!
Walt would kill you right now. He would actually have the heavies in episode 10 of Mission Impossible, seeing as how we're covering season 1, episodes 9 and 10, and have some bacteriological warfare upon you with that kind of comment. Because that's what we're talking about, gentlemen. Yo, to Ed Brewer and everybody popping in the chat. Yeah, episode 9 is, I think, my favorite out of these two. It's
really,
yes, and here's why. It's we talked about the chemistry of Roland and Cinnamon. Yes. We talked about how well, first of all, they're really the only ones that appear in this episode. That makes it different, which according to your own terms makes it stand out. That doesn't mean it's going to be in a good way, but if you've watched all the episodes up to now, like we have, you're gonna be like, why did they do that? Well, maybe maybe they were sick, maybe something happened, maybe there was an accident. Who knows? Things happen. You have to have sometimes episodes with just a few people here and there. But a spool there was. And what this is Roland Cinnamon have to go to this mission, and they got to get some recording, because everything's about recording spy stuff, right? Recovering it for the most part, or getting people out. It's all very government based. It's interesting because I don't know. I just liked it. It felt like we were there. And one complaint I do have to say about this with the show, and it's not the show itself, I think it's the production of what happened in the 60s, is there were some scenes in here that look really, really good visually, and then there's other scenes where I'm going, damn it, I know that's a backdrop, like in Star Trek, but in Star Trek I can ignore it. Here I couldn't. I felt like, God, they did this combination of where they shot stuff for real, and then where they would have a set piece and you could tell, and it's kind of like, I almost wish they could reshoot it with today's technology, but have the exact same story and actors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, and yeah, most of it is. I feel like it's mostly okay still for the first one, because I like Roland, I like Cinnamon. They stand out in this. I love that whole scene where he's out doing stuff and she's just sitting there with the tape recorder, and then she has to ad-lib because the tape runs out.
This is cool. This is a sneaking thing. I like it. Yeah.
But it's with the whole boy, the fish wire. I'm like, okay, it's a thing that happens. I just don't know. It just didn't click for me as much.
Really?
I don't think it's a bad episode. It's just not as good as some.
So what happens is these two, because Barney's not in it, the know-it-all engineer kind of guy who's really quiet and has zero chemistry or zero personality, and Willie the weightlifter, he's not in it either. So what I thought was interesting here was that these two have to kind of like pretend they don't know each other and act like they're an item, because they know they're being spied on by the Krplakistani, wherever that agents, right? So you've got a guy that's like your shoe shine guy that knows a lot of stuff that's going on the island that they're talking to, giving them some information. And so he's there, and he's supposed to be like the guy that rents canoes and stuff. And she's like a photographer and all that, taking pictures. And so you see her not seduce, but be innocent, playing with the guards that, have that stern look on her face and tell her tough things like, if you do not have the right permit, we will take it from you. Beware of the island out there, and because all these bad dudes are like the same to me, really. And you see him kind of doing it. And then they do this where they talk to each other to make it obvious, which I thought was kind of hokey. But that scene where they go into the hotel room at night and they're talking to each other, this is what they did in, was it not The Living Daylights, the Bond movie from '85 with the horses, with Mayday, Duran Duran, View to a Kill, where he's talking to his butler and it's like, really, you could be so obsequious. And they have the tape player plan where they can shut up and escape. Well, I swear to God, they had to have ripped off Mission Impossible, because that's what they do. They're talking about stuff. You hear the people in the other room kind of leaning forward across the hall, and it's dark at night, and he has to sneak out, and he cannot get back to his room in the proverbial nick of time. So what does she do? She ad-libs. This is good stuff. I liked it. I mean, I knew he was going to get there and everything was going to be okay, but you can feel the tension in these things. And It sounds like, again, you didn't really care for the episode and all that, but you don't like the whole balloon distraction at the end and all that, or what? Where everybody's shooting the balloons with their
Yeah, they're all
guns?
shooting the balloons. People are screaming. It's like, come on. I don't know. It just didn't click for me. I was far more interested in, fighting the flu.
Wow. Yeah, Cinema's got a really nice, how would her ensemble's like a mustardish type color summer dress out here. It goes well with her complexion and her hair and all that. I'll mention this because I'm going to mention it for episode 10 here in a moment. But yeah, this episode, it gives us a chance to see Roland show off. And I think, honestly, out of all the guys, maybe he's not the most valuable, but he certainly gets to show off the most. And I think right now you look at it and go, hey, it's cool that we'd be in the bachelor pad where things most part get set up, right? Or we could be her where we know what she does and that's it. And it's kind of cool how she does it, but you're like, well, can you do anything else? And then you got, Willie that can kind of like jury rig stuff. Okay, that's kind of cool, but we don't like you, so we don't care what that safes or how to crack stuff or engineer things. Who cares? We care about Roland because he gets to, wear disguises and play voices and all that, and that's cool shit. So this episode only being the both of them, even though in real life they were married for a very long time, I think they're very natural together as characters, and part of their off-screen chemistry I think leaked into here at this point, because it's really telling that, you know what, you really don't need the other characters in the show. That's how strongly I feel about it. And it's interesting because you and I mentioned before when we started to do this that, oh, hey, everybody thinks Mission Impossible. What do they think? They think of Peter Graves from the University of Minnesota, the Gophers, or whatever. And he's not there till season 2 or 3 or whatever. So we're going, I don't know any of these guys. Okay, I know this one dude from Northwest, and she's kind of cute. And this one guy always looks like he's stern faced. And then we got the Swinging Singlers Bachelor Pad. Okay, set me up. But it was a little bit different. Obviously, it didn't work for you there too. Any other final thoughts in this episode before we go into 10?
No, I just think that it's a solid episode. It's just like whenever I do these reviews, I go ahead and I pull up the wiki. I have the little descriptors. The 1 for 9 is what? How many? Is it 2 sentences? That's kind of how I feel. It's like it has stuff going on, and that's cool. But everything around it's the 2 sentences. It's 2 quick sentences. That's the plot. Have fun. I enjoyed the Carriers more, even with George Takei.
Yeah, the Shatner hater himself. Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. Because yeah, you recognized, and you know who was a heavy in episode 10 too?
Who?
Young David Carradine, aka the Kung Fu guy. I loved Kung Fu.
What?
I looked at it and he's talking. I'm like, that voice and that cadence sounds so familiar to me. And then when he squinted a little bit, when they get ready to, when he goes, my country paid me a lot of money to retrieve that. We're willing to reimburse you handsomely. If not, I'm also authorized to take it from you. Well, then take this. Hiya! We get that towards the end, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. Go ahead and start us off in The Carriers, episode 10 of season 1 of Mission Impossible, if you will, please.
Yeah, so their mission, if they choose to accept it, is to assume the role of 4 fake American citizens. The whole point is that they are meant to invade America. These foreign agents invade America, and as while disguising themselves, and we learn later on that it's to have a deadly flu go across the nation.
Yet another recently, episode of biological warfare. Am I right?
Yeah. But even from the start, they go ahead and they make up the area that these agents are supposed to go. They lure them in. Oh, yes, here you are. And then they knock them all out, take their stuff, leave them tied up to the floor. And then they go ahead and go themselves. And I love the person who's supposed to be an expert on American behavior. Oh, no, you can't do that. You're in America now. You remember your name.
Well, the one thing about this episode that really stuck out to me, and I'm not saying it's bad for this, but I want to point out because it's something you and I have also covered here on Xtreme TV. We covered every episode of and I hate to say season one because it's really just a one-shot thing with The Prisoner with Patrick McGowan, which I think, half those episodes are some of the best written things on TV. Another half, jazzy fistfights. We've had this conversation before, but at the time, learning to indoctrinate yourself into another culture's customs and manners so you could be a spy is a big deal and a skill, and it still exists to this very day. So I thought it was interesting because here we are on regular public TV when this has been going on for as long as men have been having wars, right, having spies. That this kind of is what's going on because they're going into what's quote an American town that they've built up a mock-up kind of where they're supposed to learn how to do it, and so it's like a double kind of thing, right? They're pretending to not be American to learn how to be American so they can figure out what's going on and how they act. So there's all this ha stuff going on, but The Prisoner, it's kind of like the same thing, but a bit more serious when he would escape and then couldn't trust anybody and he'd get back to his home and then he'd get gassed and knocked out and brought back to the village to learn stuff and see what would come out of him. So that alluded to something a bit more sinister than what's going on here. Here it's just for yucks, I think, in action. But the key thing for me in this episode was I feel like you. I felt the opposite. This was just kind of an okay episode. Things happen. Although Cinnamon's outfit in here, this eggplant type kind of dress and her wig was whatever, was god awful, but I was like, oh, that color is really you. It's always interesting to see how she does it because she doesn't mess around. You watch her eyes when she works. That's the whole secret to it. It's not her coming and shaking her her hips or her tits or any of that stuff like that. She's going there and talking to the guy, and it's the verbal back and forth that she has with whoever's in charge. So the guy basically alludes about screwing her, and she kind of almost basically says yes, but then walks off. She turns her cheek at the last one when he goes to kiss her, right? Then she walks off and she turns on, she kind of looks at him and smiles and looks down. So the guy's like, she's fooling around, but I got her, and lets his guard down, and other things are going on, but stuff like that's kind of cool too. But I've seen this too many times, maybe because of The Prisoner or other things. So to me, it felt very familiar, whereas the other episode was just a little bit different. Not that, again, to use your description, this is not a bad episode. It's kind of neat, but we've seen a lot of this kind of stuff already before. And I'm going, well, my fear was, as I mentioned at the end of last week's episodes, a review, that are they going to keep recycling stuff? And I hope that they don't, but they keep going to what is the war going to provide for us in terms of a plot device. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's just, I'm trying to see. It's not different. It's just maybe it's just new enough where I feel like this was a good episode. I enjoyed it a lot. Whereas the other one, it's not that it's too different. I like both of them. I just don't like them enough, I guess.
Right.
Oh, well.
What was your favorite part about this episode? What made you really like it?
I think one of my favorite bits is when he's teaching them about baseball, football, going ahead. Oh no, you don't hand it to him. You throw it. Here, throw your dollar. Throw your change. It was ridiculous, but it was fun. And then when he goes
like
out,
being a rude American, that was kind of funny.
Yes, and when he goes, oh crap, was it Roland? Goes out to smoke a cigarette, quote unquote.
Goes down, and yeah.
I like that whole scene. There's an intensity to it. I almost thought, especially when he does get infected with the thing. Did you like the makeshift needle at the end of this episode? Using a perfume
I didn't.
nozzle?
It doesn't bother me. What the thing that does bother me is, like, I don't like timers and countdowns because I think that's weak and I think it's artificial. Yes, nobody wants a bomb to go off, right? But God forbid, James Bond and Goldfinger, cuts it off by 007 seconds. So are we 3, 2, 1, click? Everybody looks around. Nothing happens. That's and the worst abuse of this too is not Law Abiding Citizen, which has the worst ending of all time. The worst TV show ending of all time is the end of season 1. Claire Danes plays in the show whose name escapes me, and the ginger guy who was a Marine or something, was overseas in a war, came back a war hero, but then the thought is, has he been turned? And it was fantastic. And at the end of season 1, is he going to set a bomb off while I think he's in the White House or something like that, kill the president? And that's the cliffhanger. And you go into season 2 and you're like, whatever. And then that's it. I'm like, fuck, they built this up and they should have blown the goddamn bomb off. but they chicken shit it out or whatever. I can't remember the name of that show, but that's infuriating. So when you have something like here, what I like with the Tom Cruise movies is when they do the masks, most of the time it doesn't work, right? And then they have to ad lib something. So I'm looking for that. A lot of times on TV, though, it just happens to work because we've got 5 minutes left in the episode that we have to wrap it up and they think of something. So is it that? I guess. I don't know. I mean, to me, the setup and how they're going to approach it and what goes wrong is the most entertaining thing, how they respond to that, not the actual resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just me personally, my like.
No, I understand that. I also think that I feel like it was a little bit bullshit. Not that I'm looking forward to the first death on the team, but there needs to be a death on the team. Coming soon.
Only if it serves a purpose of it, because again, kind of talking about all these characters here. I'd say that the best heist movie that I think exists is not Ocean's 11, the original, not that remake stuff that's all flash. And even though it's enjoyable and pretty, I still say it's the Thomas Crown Affair. And to me, that's there's definitely cut mouse there because it's about two humans and it's a seduction game and all that too. And it's done at a very adult level. And Steve McQueen just got an air of class about him as it. And there's other heist stuff too. And I know this show kind of almost feels that way a little bit because they're up against the clock or some artificial deadline that is supposed to make it do it. And frankly, I'd like to see them fail a little bit or somehow. And I don't mean I'm intentionally getting myself locked into jail, so it's the quickest way to do whatever because everything fucking works and it's annoying. And the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting that they did do in here was that they talked about how Roland. It was up to Roland to I think it was actually the episode 9 where they talked about how Roland had to improvise because the person who was trying to get out with the line, as it were, the tape in episode 9, he could only get this far and he was only visible for so much amount of time. So it's got to be in this area here. And, you were going to force everything to be in a situation. So somehow this creative flash comes in you and you can figure out what's really happening. I'm like, that's kind of a weird, elaborate way to say, hey, fucking just figure it out. But ultimately, that's what's happening in these episodes, right, too? I mean, I think it would be more interesting if we could see a bit more conflict intrapersonally with some of the characters. Like does Willie get a little pissy about whatever? Now, I don't want it to be a drama, right? I mean, it's not House or anything. It's supposed to be this elite team that does everything. But I would think that seeing something where how do they deal with the stress of what they're going through? Because let's be honest, we're in episode 10. This is like 10 James Bond movies, for God's sakes. Am I right? That's, you can only do so much before you start to burn out. I mean, it's a good episode. It's solid. It's just, I get tired of the heavy guys talking in those fake foreign accents. You will come here and you will do it. And it's like, come on, bro. Give me a better villain. Don't give me a bunch of goons that don't do anything. And we all know how bad 1960s fistfights are, right? Am I right?
Yeah. I guess it's just a matter of seeing if they'll. I don't think it's a burnout yet. They're not close to burning out yet.
No.
They've got. No. It's 6 seasons. They have to at least have 2 good ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's good, and we do know that as the seasons go on, people do change as far as their, who's showing up and what's happening and everything too. So that might make it interesting because right now, 10 episodes in, almost halfway through season 1 here, we don't have really, I think, this giant meta arc that ties things together, which I'm fine with. I have no problem with it just being. We could have watched any of these out of order. Am I right? I mean, Sam Elliott's in here a little bit. Linda Day George, if you know that name. So there's definitely names from older listeners of the Xtreme Movie Show to kind of figure out. But all in all, it's still fairly solid. I have to say this. Their quality really hasn't dropped off, but it's not like they've had a blow-away episode that you go, wow, they could really do this if they put their mind to it. It's been fairly solid out of the race. You know what you're going to be getting from episode 1, and it seems to be continuing that. I mean, at least that's not bad. That's actually, I think, a good thing that they're consistent. 10 episodes so far. How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel good. I'm still happy with this choice. We're next week we'll be halfway, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm still convinced it was the right choice.
Yeah. We do have, ladies and gentlemen, just a quick topical look at episodes 9 and 10 of season 1 of Mission Impossible, the original TV show. We wanted to take a look at it and see how good is it really. We haven't really talked about it at all, but it's been pretty good so far. Definitely seen worse by all means, even with modern TV. But it's interesting for the older people who like to cover classic television and those sorts of things here. I've heard some interesting things people have had to say about it, and so it's really awesome we're able to sit here and kind of go through all these. And yes, the TV show and the movies are not the same. Let's not act like they are, or one's better or worse. They're just different, even though one's inspired by it. But by watching the first season, you might appreciate the different attempts of Mission Impossible, the movies with the Tom Cruise franchise. Obviously, Brian De Palma, I think the first one's a comedy, and intentionally made to not be like the TV show, which pissed a lot of people off, and that's why a lot of people weren't in it. 2 is a John Woo film, and the 3 is where they hit their stride, of course, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and the countdown there, which worked because he shoots his wife. And then after that, whatever you might say about the rest of the films there too. But we'll be covering Dead Reckoning Part 2 next year when it comes out. Any other final thoughts there, Pixel, before we call it a night?
Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to hear us talk about a bad movie next.
Called and starring
Night of the Sharks, starring Bubba the Shark.
Treat Williams, a very hairy Treat Williams. Okay, and for you old school guys from the 70s cop shows, Huggy Bear is in this as well. That's all I'm going to say. So we'll see you guys on the stream here on the Xtreme Movie Show on the new stream there for Night of the Sharks with Treat Williams here in a couple minutes there too. Have a good night. Homeland, that's it, Ed. Thank you. My goodness, couldn't remember that. She was great till she started having sex with everybody on there, being bipolar. But hey, what can you do when you can't write? Yeah, you just make shit up. All right, good night now.